Welcome to the Profitable Farmer podcast, where we share stories and tips to help you run a better farming business and create your very own freedom farm. If you're looking to work smarter and not harder in your farm business, welcome. You're in the right place. G'day everyone. Welcome once again to Profitable Farmer. Hutch here. I'm back from man flu and I've got my voice back. So Westy, thank you so much for looking after the podcast last session. And mate, just absolutely amazing to hear four absolute champions, you included. You know, Trevor Hendy, Kane Johnson and Mark Kluwer just shoot the breeze and reflect on all things mindfulness, resilience and growth, mate. Thanks for joining me again. Thanks for hijacking the podcast. You can hijack this podcast, mate, whenever you want, especially if you're going to bring superstars like that to the table. What a special moment, mate. How was that for you?
It was great fun. Thanks, Hutch, and good to be on here with you, mate. And great to be able to put another great podcast out to all our listeners. It was amazing. Three incredible guys, and yeah, we got to spend that weekend with them. Some of our platinum members, and for those of you that haven't heard, I think it's podcast number 107. Are we on number 108 now, Hutch?
That's it, mate.
Perfect. So yeah, go and have a listen. It's a ripper, and there's so much wisdom there. And I'm sure there'll be a follow-up podcast at some stage. They've got so much to offer.
Mate, a month on from that retreat, and a few weeks on from that podcast, what's your personal key reflection? What's been your number one takeaway on that experience?
Yeah, calmness, I think. So. I'm still getting, there's still some amazing messages coming through from the 15 guys that we did it with. And yes, just coming off the back of that and their awareness and watching themselves and coming back to calm. And I'm sure we'll touch on it today. But for myself personally, I've actually kicked coffee for the last 4 weeks since doing that retreat and just looking after myself better. Just that reminder to prioritise our health and our like I said on the podcast, our inner hero.
Yeah, great to hear, Westy. So I had a podcast lined up for this session, guys, but I've bumped it back for a few weeks because I just felt with what's playing out this season, there are some people who are experiencing, significant wet finish to this season, which is really challenging, especially perhaps for our croppers on flat Western country or whatever. But some of you are experiencing the impact of a minor flood event. Some of you are experiencing complete wipeout, and it brings with it this crazy game that we play. It brings with it some real challenges, and the challenges that we face going into a season where haymaking, harvesting, fly strike, all those things might be, to the extreme. There's a lot of work ahead of a lot of us, and that can be overwhelming and that can be challenging. And so given that, and, in the hope that this is encouraging and supportive of our listeners who are going through your own version of adversity, I've asked Westy to join us and just reflect back on the KI fires and what happened and what inspired him most in watching our members recover from adversity back then. But I've also asked Troy and Nette Fisher, who are just wonderful alumni members of our Platinum Mastermind program at Farm Owners Academy, to join us and just reflect also on their personal story of being wiped out by the Pinery Fires back in November 2015. 7 years on, what Troy and Nette have achieved, it's quite extraordinary and quite wonderful. And so I just also wanted to offer some hope and some encouragement to all of you that there can be brightness at the end of this. So just stay in the fight. Let's get through this season. But in this session, Westy, thank you for joining us. And Troy and Nette, great having you with us. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So, Westy, the KI fires impacted 5 or 6 or more, probably 7 or 8 of our members, plus so many other friends and families of yours.
Yeah.
Now, years later, 3 or 4 years later, what inspires you most about what has been achieved on KI by way of recovery effort?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to your intro there too, Hutch, I think even if you're not, like some of Australia having a bumper year as well. So there's actually so many lessons that are going to come out of this podcast that will help people day to day, even just managing the little incidentals, the one percenters that come up day to day, breakdowns and all those little things. Actually, adversity is that as well to a degree. I know we're focused on the bigger stuff today, but everyone will get something from this podcast. To your question, I just want to share something that happened last night. Actually, we've been watching a series on Netflix around natural disasters. And my oldest son said, he's like, I'm so glad we don't have any of these natural disasters, Dad. And we were like, can you remember 2.5 years ago we had one of Australia's biggest bushfires that wiped half the island out, if not more? And he's like, oh yeah. And it was a real interesting point from him to sort of forget about that 2.5 years on. To realize that with the right mindset, you move on from that sort of stuff. If it was proof that he had sort of moved on himself, and that most of KI has, and I can't speak for everyone, it has had a lot more impact for others than it has for some, especially us. But for him to say that as a young kid, to completely forget about that natural disaster that happened on Kangaroo Island, is a testament to the school and to the mindset, and even what Farm Owners Academy has passed down to those younger kids. But yeah, it was a pretty cool comment just to highlight that with the right mindset and without playing the victim, if you play the victor, not the victim, you're actually going to be able to move through these things.
Yeah. Westy, when you think about some of those families that we supported through that, what have they achieved 2.5, 3 years on? And what are you most proud of about how they went about their recovery?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is really interesting watching them. And they have one of the key things that stood out is that they made fast decisions. So they stocked up really quickly. They knew their numbers, and to one of my points that I think is one of the keys is taking stock to assess your current reality, and then staying disciplined to the basics. So it's easy. So many people, even just on the day-to-day stuff, if shearing or harvest, we get away from our weekly meetings, we get away from knowing our numbers, we get away from the real communication stuff, the basic stuff that we should be doing, the fundamentals in, week out. We actually need to stay disciplined to those habits that we generally do in normal times. And that's what I saw in these guys and girls over here, is that they stayed true to their habits. And they made sure that they planned, and they made sure that they focused. They knew their numbers, and they were able to make good, fast decisions. So they were stocked up so much quicker than everyone else, and benchmarking their businesses 1 and 2 years on, they were back in the mix again already. Where some of the other businesses that have sort of rebred up their stock or taking longer or doing more stuff, less organised, their figures aren't going to be there. Profitability is just going to take a lot longer to get that back to where it should be.
Yeah, just healthy reminder to stay focused and not let the adversity distract you or overwhelm you as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone that finds overwhelm, there's so much overwhelm in a flood or a fire or whatever, or a drought, whatever it might be, when there's so much extra work often. So when there's overwhelm, all it is you just got to come back and be disciplined to your planning, and then put something in place. There's obviously a lot more work. How do you bring extra people in? Do you get what other people do you need around you? So yeah, staying focused on those basics is critical.
And speed of decision making. It's a great comment, Westy. We'll come back to some of those points and go a bit deeper into them. Troy and Nette, would you mind just sharing what happened November 2015, and then also where are you now 7 years on?
I'll go first. So there was a big bushfire event, like 80,000 hectare size fire in an afternoon, which sort of wiped out our place and a couple hundred other properties across a number of districts. We run stud sheep, and we sort of kissed goodbye to 25 years of breeding in about 3 or 4 hours. So we after that, we were sort of presented with a bit of a blank sheet of paper of how to go forward, how to rebuild the property, do we keep breeding stud sheep, et cetera, et cetera. And so to some of the points Westy raised, like we very early on. We worked out, what we were going to do, and started to set some goals, put some plans in place in different timescales. So ranging from how do we get through this week, through to the next month, 6 months, 12 months, etc. And bit by bit, through lots of hard work and lots of help from others, we ground our way through the first year. And within 2 years, pretty much 90% of what we set out to achieve had been achieved in terms of replacing stock and infrastructure and machines and so forth. And sort of since then, it's putting a spring in our step is the wrong phrase. It's put a bit of a cattle prod up the bum, really. And so since then, we've sort of haven't just stopped there. We've taken on a couple of other lease farms and sort of tripled the area we farm since before the fire. We've doubled our stud size, so we're selling double the number of rams now. We've really sort of taken on a growth phase. And I guess, we're not finished yet. We're sort of, we have 5 and 10 year goals and they project further than where we are now. So that's sort of a bit of a summary of a little snippet of where we found ourselves about 7 years ago and some of the bits of how we transitioned to where we are now. I'm sure Nettie can elaborate a bit more.
Yeah, it's a remarkable story, Troy. Just when you look back at what you guys have achieved over the last 6 and 7 years, it is incredible and something to be really proud of. Nettie, how do you reflect on where you are looking back now on what's played out since those fires?
It was a pretty crazy time, and to be honest, now we don't think about it that much. It's not a big part of our lives. It's definitely a part of our story and who we are, and that will never change. And so I guess you just, like from the very start, we just, after the fire had gone, because we both have worked off farm and, we could have got jobs elsewhere or, done something different. And we both just sort of sat down together and decided, no, farming is what we love. Breeding stud sheep is what we love. So we're just deciding we're going to recover. We're going to do this. And so once you make that decision and own it and then just make some plans around it, well, the rest is, I'm not saying it's easy, but you just rip into it and do it. And I guess we just feel proud and feel like we can handle anything now. Enjoying the journey.
So Nettie, that was my next question for you do you feel like having handled that you're more equipped now to handle an adversity in the future than you were?
Yeah, I think so, because you just don't know what's going to happen next and you don't know the opportunities that are going to come your way. Just that, I guess, a bit of a mantra that everything will be okay. You just have to believe it. Because we've got through a pretty major event, and not only are we fine, we're doing really well. So you just got to back yourself, I suppose.
Troy, is there anything in your current reality now that wouldn't have happened on the farm if it hadn't been for the fires?
I think potentially a lot of the expansion we've undertaken might not have happened. We might have just stuck with the status quo. This is a major disruption to life, business, the whole operation, and it probably made us ask some more poignant questions, which I guess led us to where we are now. So, I suspect if this didn't happen to us, the status quo would be very close to where we are now, which that was fine. But we've grown a lot and we're running a bigger and better business now than we ever have been. So I'm glad, not to say we're glad it happened, but sometimes a really horrible catalyst can turn into a positive thing, and that's certainly the case for us.
Yeah, I've talked before in these podcasts about post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. And so when there is a trauma or an adversity, that we've got a choice or not about either going into decline or going exponential on the other side of adversity. Some people need to lose their legs before they climb Everest. There's post-traumatic growth as well. And I think what you guys have achieved is that you had that adversity, Westy, like those people you spoke about on KI, and they made some choices, did some reflection, stayed in that attitude of ownership that you spoke about, Nettie, and then went after recovery. That in and of itself has achieved exponential growth for so many people. And I think Westy, Troy and Nettie are just such a great example of that, aren't they?
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to meet these guys back in 2015 or 16 and watch their sort of journey, and some of the decisions and their ambition, I suppose, that come off the back of that. And I think adversity is actually a platform to project forward if you have that mindset and look at it that way.
Yep. Thanks, Westy. So, Troy, would you mind just giving us a bit of an overview of Ashmore Rams and your business model and your business now?
Sure.
Is this a paid advert plug, Hutch?
This is the paid plug. Go your hardest. No, I'm joking.
So we're a seed stock and grain business. We're based in the mid-north of South Australia. Currently, we breed white Suffolk and ultra-white rams. We breed and sell around 500 rams per annum, and they go across all parts of South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales. Alongside that, we run a grain business where we grow wheat and lentils and a little bit of barley, and that's all pretty high end sort of grain destined for the food industry. Chime in, Nettie.
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. Yeah.
So in the ram sale business, how many more rams are you selling now compared to 7 years ago?
About double. So it was sort of running 500 or 600 ewes back then, and selling sort of 250 rams a year, and we've basically doubled the size of our ewe flock. We're sort of joining close to 1,200 ewes now, and selling around that 500 rams per annum. I guess we've just got a goal to steadily grow that. If we can grow that by 10% per annum, that's what we've been doing for a number of years now. And we've got
Troy. Just on that, how like you lost all your 25 years of genetics in that fire, and now you're only 7 years on. Your genetics, I'm assuming, are a lot better than what they were 7 years ago. How did you? What decisions did you make to move forward so quickly?
So that I guess it's all about choices. We had choices. We could have bought people's culls and people's bottoms and started 10 years behind everyone else, but we chose not to do that. So I approached some of the leading breeders across the country and acquired some of their elite females to flush embryos out of. We also purchased pregnant ewes and dry ewes that we joined, and we did a lot of artificial breeding in the first couple of years. And so, for better or worse, we set ourselves the goal to not go backwards in numbers and not go backwards in genetic merit. And because we set those goals and we're pretty stubborn, we hit them. We hit them in year one. And we've just sort of been steaming along ever since. Genetic merit continues to climb, and the numbers has continued to climb. So probably boils down to choices and just digging in and really focusing on the goal, I guess.
Oh, we did have one little bit of help on the way too. When we're sort of trying to work out how to go about it, we just needed a break from cooking, and we went to the local pub, and there was actually a stock agent there who had been drinking a fair bit, and they said, "Oh, geez, what are you guys going to do after, now? Like, this is going to set you back 10 years. And we thought, oh, wow, if he's thinking that, everybody's thinking that. And that can't happen. We're not just going to take, we're not going to go backwards by 10 years. It was like red rag to a bull. So we really owe him a favour, who shall remain nameless. But, that really motivated us to just go, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to get back in business and keep doing what we love to do.
Nettie, I think you raise a really, really important point about be careful who you're surrounding yourself with when you're sort of trying to recover, or whether you're going through overwhelm and adversity. If you surround yourself in people who are going to collude with you in the negative, you might get caught up making poor choices and poor decisions. But if you get the right people around you, advisors, friends, peers, who have that positive and growth mindset, then you're far more likely to ask better questions, make better decisions, and to your point, implement on better choices, Troy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been touched on already, but we had a choice on how we reacted to what happened. What happened was out of our control, but how we react is in our control. And so we could have turned to the negative, and that's a complete justification for where our business is falling over. We're going backwards. We'll never get back on our feet. Or we could have chosen to turn it into a positive, which is what we did, and use that as a motivation to propel ourselves, higher, further and better than we were before. And so that's that one thing that is in our control that we I guess took a bit of ownership of, and here we are.
Troy, what would how does the future look for you guys now? If you look forward over your next 5 and 7 and 10 years, how does the future look for you now?
It's really bright. On the back of two really good seasons, this one included, touch wood. Things are super positive. Pretty much all commodities are travelling well, and so business is going really well. But with that backdrop, but yeah, we've set ourselves some future growth goals in terms of area farmed and number of rams bred. So we're continuing to certainly grow the ultra white side of our business. There's huge demand in shedding sheep over the past few years, and the market talks, so we're sort of trying to respond to that. But yeah, in the next 5 to 10 years, our eldest kids might start to think about farming, and so a lot of our goals are around setting up a business which is attractive enough for them to want to get involved, and interesting, and there's enough going on that they see that as a viable career choice as opposed to some of the other professions out there. So that's sort of part of our pathway without getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, one of the things that maybe was holding us back, prior to the fire, like we had some pretty outdated machinery and infrastructure, and it sort of, from a mindset perspective, it does sort of hold you back. Oh, we can't do that because our truck's not big enough. Oh, we can't sow that paddock in time, things like that. And because we lost, the vast majority of our machinery, we weren't just going to replace it with the old gear that we had. We sort of bought fit for purpose things. Not all of it was new, and not all of it was expensive. Like we bought a precision seeder that really suits our business. That was a game changer for us. And then, we bought a $40,000 truck and got a $20,000 stock crate made for it, and we can deliver rams now. And just that tiny little investment and just that change of, well, we can do that now. And then all of a sudden, you know, someone called in from Victoria and said, oh, do you deliver? And we thought, oh, well, we can now, you know. So sometimes it's just those little things like certain machinery that you have in your business that's actually holding you back. And, and so I guess we carry that forward. Like we weren't really big into cropping, and we bought machinery that we didn't know how to drive, and it was pretty scary at first, and thought, well, it's not, you know, we just have to learn how to use it. And now we have, and we think, well, if we can do that, we can do anything else we want to do.
So, Nettie, how does the future look for you?
Oh, probably, pretty aligned with Troy's, I hope. We just, I think we need to be conscious to have a work-life balance. Like, we've probably become addicted to working a bit, and, you have to, have time off as well. So we bought a little beach house at Port Elliot a couple of years ago and forced ourselves to go down there, and we love it. Like, it's a happy place. And so we have to be disciplined to make sure that we rest as well as work. But I'd be happy to carry on as we are now, I guess. And hopefully some of the kids want to be involved. And
So 3 girls. Isabel, Indigo and Elkie, and it sounds like you've got at least a couple of them expressing interest in coming home, guys.
Well, it's early days, but I guess, like with any business, you don't want to make things too easy, but you want to make it attractive enough that they want to come. And so that's a bit of a balancing act, I suppose. We see businesses where the next generation waltz in and it's all shiny, bells and whistles, everything, and that doesn't go so well for a little while. We've had to sort of grind tooth and nail to get ahead, and I guess somehow you've got to instill that hunger in your children, and that appetite to be successful, I suppose. So that's a challenge, I guess, that we think about and work on, and hopefully we get it partly right.
Thanks, guys. Westy, I want you to give a shout out and name drop a couple of those people on KI who you just might acknowledge for a moment about their success post KI fires. Who are some of those families that you just reflect on? Just give me a shout out.
I'm going to miss a couple, so I apologise. But Tim Buck the Buck family just absolutely just ripped in and got everything better than what it ever was before, back into full production really quickly. The Gregors, same thing. Rick Morris, Annie Morris, the Morrises further down west. The Davises that were the very first farm against Flinders Chase that got burnt. Simonses, John and Joe and Hannah and Brian Simons, like same thing as Troy and Nettie. They lost so much of their stud flock, but yet they used that adversity to propel themselves forward.
Thanks, mate. So I guess the reason I wanted to have you, the 3 of you, on this podcast, I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm going to get each of you to respond to this. Troy, if you could go first. On reflection, is there a silver lining to come from the adversity that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I think the silver lining is the propulsion that we've experienced as a result of this horrible thing that happened. And if it didn't happen, we probably wouldn't have grown our business, and like I said earlier, we'd probably still be just dealing with the status quo and battling away on a much smaller scale, and scratching our heads how to buy the paddock next door type thing. So I think the silver lining for me is just the change that this forced us to think about and then plan for and execute. that's been massive, really.
Nettie, for you?
Probably, similar to Troy, but also I guess the confidence we have within ourselves. It's not like we were overly confident people and thought we could do anything, but yeah, what we've, I guess, been able to manage the last few years. It just gives you an inner confidence, I suppose, that you can get through. You get through to the other side and you keep going.
Westy, what's your take on that question? Is there a silver lining to come from that sort of adversity?
Absolutely. I think the important thing to actually getting the silver lining is having faith that there is a silver lining, and we don't, when we're in the trenches, we can't actually see outside of them. But I reckon faith is a huge part of knowing that there's something good and there's an opportunity out of this. We don't know what it is yet, and pushing through. But for me, the first one that actually comes to my mind is community. Like, there's nothing like a natural disaster to bring your community together. Absolutely, it can pull it apart as well. But everyone has to stand up and fight and team up. And I met so many great people in our community that actually, funnily enough, haven't even met before in a small community. So that was one of them. If I was to ask a bunch of the other farmers around here, silver linings, like they've reaped for change creates change. So like Troy and Nettie said, they'd still probably have some of their old machinery. They'd still sort of be just poking along how they were. But change creates an opportunity and a new blank piece of paper. And so many people on Kangaroo Island have been able to build new sheep yards, new shearing sheds, new fencing. Vermin is a huge issue over here with the wallabies and the kangaroos. So for them, they've been able to put up vermin-proof fencing and have a real clean slate. So there's so many silver linings right across the board. There's obviously the little things that still impact people as well, the emotional stuff. And I know that there is a lot of people still going through that. And actually, some of the science and psychology that comes out is that 2 or 3, even 4 years on, is when the biggest impact is mentally, because it's sort of you're pushing so hard to get through it and rebuild. Then all of a sudden you stop a little bit. So there's still all that side of thing, but so many silver linings. But yeah, as long as you actually believe that they're there somewhere and you keep your eyes open for them.
Yeah, great point, Westy. Thank you. So looping back round, Troy, what would you say to any one of a number of farmers out there that have had just the most ridiculously wet season, crops, some or most underwater, trying to wrestle with how to even contemplate hay carding or harvest after having to rely on aerial spraying? And, we're in a season where people have thrown the book at a big crop and now they're looking like not being able to harvest the fruit. What would you say to them about the overwhelm and, the challenge that they're feeling and facing that might help them get through?
Yeah, I mean, to put in the most expensive crop on record and then to have it slip through your fingers is brutal and devastating, and most of which is out of your control. So I would probably advise people to think about what can I control. And one that's really important at a time like that is your finance. So obviously income's going to be down, harvest income's going to be way down. So really start to hone in on the financial side of your business and, just focus on that like a hawk in terms of expenditure and just knowing where every dollar's going and, modelling out 3 and 5 year cash flows and that will hopefully give you some light at the end of the tunnel, that everything's going to be okay, that the next 12 months will definitely be a big grind, but that's something is in your control and can potentially give you, it's just one thing that you can control to some extent.
Yeah, not doing that forecast. Sorry, my audio is not great. My apologies. Not doing that forecasting, you would be sitting here just worrying about the potential loss. But if you can predict the loss and then even predict your peak debt next year and the year after and identify that there is a way forward, That's incredibly empowering. And so it's a really, really significant comment. Nettie, what would your comment be to someone sort of feeling their own version of adversity and overwhelm right now?
Well, just, I suppose, to generalise about a family farm, I'll talk to that, I suppose, but which is a lot of them. I guess it's really important for all the members within that business, like, just don't forget that you're all a team, you're all on the same side. So, emotions can be, or everyone can vary, but you do have to be pretty tolerant of each other. Like, there were certain times when Troy and I were probably not particularly nice to each other, but you've got to just remember that, you're on the same side, you're in it together. If you're committing to staying being farmers, we'll really commit to each other. Like, no farm is more important than your family. That's number one. But also, work together, keep communicating, and be really conscious of perhaps the different generations. So the way we processed our event was very different to Troy's parents. And in some ways they took it harder, and we're at a much different stage of life. So, it found it in some ways harder to deal with. So you just have to be really conscious of that and give them time to sort of process it, and also, not get dragged down by negativity if that's what's, you're facing. But, stay married and work together, and, make sure you look after your kids, and, and obviously, the finance side of it, you just have to, really be on top of that and talk early with your bank. Like, don't just give them a surprise once you run out of money. Like, get ahead of the game. And, those two things, I'd say.
Nettie, are there any little things that you did that helped you and Troy stay strong together, or your family stay as that united team?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one thing that happened to us before the fire, which actually gave us this massive sort of, in some ways, it gave us this massive perspective before. So we had our third daughter was accidentally born in Queensland, severely premature, and she was not really supposed to live. And not for all of the 3 months, but spent 3 months in hospital sort of fighting for her life, and nearly went blind, and kidneys nearly shut down, all sorts of stuff like that. She actually came home a day and a half before the fire. So for us, we already had this perspective that, the most important thing in life is your family and your children, and everything else will, that's your number one priority, I suppose. So
great comment.
Probably not a little thing. Sorry.
No, that's but I wondered if it was going to come up today. When we're in adversity, one of the hardest things to do is keep perspective. And you had perspective provided to you, Nettie, in a way because of that first adversity that you had to navigate as a family before the fire. So I think it's so important when we're in overwhelm and when we're feeling really challenged and we've got a mountain of work ahead of us, and there's all of that going on. How is it that we can keep perspective? And the reason I wanted to have the three of you on this podcast is just, to offer that little snippet of insight to our listeners that if you are feeling adversity and you are feeling challenged and you are feeling overwhelmed, find a way to take the highest perspective possible. And just like, as Troy said, know your numbers, project forward. All of these things help you keep perspective that you might be in the heat of battle now, but there will be brightness of the future. And in fact, things can be better as a result of this adversity than they have been if you're just willing to lean in, trust the process, have faith, as you say, Westy, and move forward, with a sense of ownership and a growth mindset. Westy, what's your response to that question? What would your advice be to someone going through their own version of real challenge at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Troy and Nettie nailed it with perspective. I was just finished reading Sam Bailey's book, Head Over Hills? The quadriplegic farmer from Cropper Creek, and he sums it up all through the book so well. But it's what really matters at the end of the day. Is it the crop or the olives that aren't flowering, or whatever agribusiness that you're in at the moment isn't working for you, or whatever adversity that you're going through? What really matters at the end of the day is faith, family, and friends. So we need to have perspective on that first and foremost. Someone is always doing it worse off than us, and sometimes we just lose perspective of what actually really matters. Trevor Handy actually says, and we'll share this a bit across the community, Hutch, like the conditions are always perfect. And if you realise that the conditions are always perfect, you actually see life from a different perspective. I've just got a little quote here that actually came to me yesterday. But the funny thing about life is once you begin to take note of the things that you're grateful for, you actually begin to lose sight of the things that you lack. And at the moment, through adversity, we might be looking at the crop that we've lost, or the fencing that we've lost in a fire, or the stock that we've lost, whatever it is. We're always looking at what we've lost, even in day-to-day stuff. We might look at the breakdown that we had, and we've lost 3 hours worth of work because we had to drive into town and get a part. We're always looking at what we've lost. We're never actually looking at what we've got. And most of us, we can't complain with what we've got. It's 5, 10, 15, $50 million worth of assets under our belt. Most of us have got family, or the opportunity to create family and friends and all that sort of stuff. So just finding gratitude is probably my biggest piece of advice, and that just brings calm. And to Troy's point around the numbers and all that sort of thing, it's just about being proactive versus reactive, because proactive is calmness and fast decision and better decision making. Reactive is chaos, and we don't want to be in that chaos, because if you're in a chaos mode, that's when relationships start to break down, and things just don't go so well.
Thanks, Westy. Your comments remind me of the Resilience Project and Hugh Van Cuylenburg. And for those of you that haven't read the Resilience Project book, or you're not listening to Hugh Van Cuylenburg's podcast, I recommend it highly. You listen to the Richmond Football Club and how they've transformed themselves. And if you look at the Australian Rugby League Club now, and that whole code has come out of real challenge. Hugh Van Cuylenburg and his team have worked intently with a whole lot of schools and unis and corporates, but in particular, those two sporting teams. And when you hear their players talk after a game, all you hear them saying now is, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. I'm so grateful for my players. I'm so grateful for my coach. I'm so grateful, for the crowd. He's instilling a narrative and a mindset of gratitude in these clubs and these corporates and these schools and these teams. And everything can change when you focus on the good and what you have rather than the lack and what you don't have, Westy. And I think it's such an important point. And so it's through gratitude that we can find a sense of calm and find a higher perspective, and then be in a better mindset than we were, I think, to start looking at our numbers, asking better questions, to Troy's point, making better choices. We can then get into faster decision making. We can get into better planning. We can get into more respectful conversations with our family and our team, to Nettie's point. But I take your point completely, Westy, that if we can just in adversity stop and go, well, I've got both my arms, I've got both my legs, I've got eyes, I've got all my fingers, my family are okay. I might not have X, Y, and Z, but here's what I do have. That can shift our mindset from scarcity and lack to, abundance and growth. And, what we're hearing in what Troy and Nettie are saying is they just chose ownership, they chose gratitude, they chose perspective, and then they move forward. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I love your comment there, Westy, that it starts with gratitude, but that then does allow for the calm perspective, strategy, thinking, better questions, better answers, better choices, better actions. So Wonderful comment.
And just on that, Hutch, I think every day to day, it's a great tool to have in your belt day to day. I was recently at a farm, visiting at a farm, and they were in the sheep yards weaning lambs. There was swear words going on at the sheep. There was swear words going on at the dogs. There was frustration. There was negative body language. There was absolutely no excuses I don't believe, in to have any of that. Like, how lucky are they to be in the sheep yards having livestock and the opportunity to sell great fat lambs, but it's just getting stuck on the small mindset. So to have that in your toolkit day in, day out, the kids might be too noisy in the house. How much gratitude do you have to actually have kids, or whatever it is? Like, we get stuck on those little things that we shouldn't, day in, day out. And to Sam Bailey's point, I finished the last page last night in his book, and he pretty much summed it up. Someone asked him if they could fix spinal cord injuries, would he take it? And he said no, because the opportunities that becoming quadriplegia has given him. He travels Australia speaking to people and helping other people get through adversity, so he wouldn't have it any other way. And when you look at life like that, it's a breakdown. A breakdown follows a breakthrough. Always follows a breakdown if you allow it. And I'm sure everyone's heard it before as well. But a butterfly was once larvae or in a cocoon before it flushed, and everyone's got it in them. Just got to go and find it.
Troy and Nettie, would you have had it any other way on reflection?
Oh, look, if you could have told me where we would be now 7 years hence, I'd sign up to that and go through what we went through for sure. But just to give you a little snippet, when we joined Farm Owners, we were probably the bottom of the class in terms of the bench.
We were like really the bottom.
In terms of the benchmarking side of things, we weren't running a profitable business. We lacked scale and a few other things. And in this last year of benchmarking in the alumni, we're at the top of the class.
Yeah, and superstars.
Yeah. So and we're really proud of that. We've worked hard and we've had a lot of help from the Farm Owners team. But I guess all of these things come together and have happened at different points in time for a reason to create the outcome that we're where we are now. And so, and our overall farm, our fences are as good as they've ever been. Our machines are tenfold better than they were. We've got more sheep. So, would I go back? Absolutely not. No. I think I'd sign up for the journey we've had over the last 7 years, even with the horrible event.
Fascinating comment. Nettie, for you?
The same as Troy, really. Yeah, it was a horrible time, and it was not good for you or your neighbours and everyone in the district. But I think Westy, you're right. Like, the community is stronger because of it. And so that's a good outcome too. And, you within yourself are stronger. So, I mean, absolutely, I wouldn't go back to where we were before the fire. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I want to round this out just by thanking you all sincerely for jumping onto this podcast at such short notice and sharing your reflection on your journey post-adversity. I do want to acknowledge those people in our community who have been through that and have bounced back, because it inspires everyone in your community and everyone in our community when you do make that significant growth post-challenge. So well done to you all. Thank you so much for your time, Troy and Nettie.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate the opportunity.
Pleasure.
Any final comments, guys, to round this out?
Hutch, just want to quickly, just to jump in. The Bush family actually from the mid-north bought a property over here not long before the fire too, and just reflecting back on what they were able to do from absentee farmers, the amount of work that they put in on KI as well, and got their place back up and running as well, which was a testament to them too. So I just wanted to acknowledge them.
Good on you, mate. Troy and Nettie, any final comments?
Oh, I guess we just, for anyone listening that's, really, having massive crop losses and having trouble with livestock, just hang in there. It is going to be better, and perhaps, it is important that you have to let go that the crop that you hoped you were going to have, it's, not going to happen now, but you just don't know what's around the corner and what will happen next year. Everything will be okay.
What a perfect way to finish. Thanks, Nettie. Westy, a final comment from you?
Yeah, absolutely, Hutch. I was speaking to a farmer not long ago who was flood affected, and actually put a lot of pressure on himself He felt that he'd failed his family because his crops were failing and he wasn't bringing the cash in this year. If you speak to his wife and his kids, they would absolutely not see him as a failure because it rained too much. So we need to take that pressure off ourselves in the farming industry. And my final comment is just get excited, rip in, feel it, like absolutely grieve the process if you need to, feel those emotions, allow yourself to be down, but don't be the victim, be the victor, and get up and take this as an opportunity and come flying out the other end. You look at 20, 30, depends on how old everyone is listening, but when you're in your last days, you're not going to look back and think about whatever this little thing might be affecting you. It's generally, unless it's a personal thing and a personal tragedy, then we can all move through it and drop in the ocean.
Troy, Nette, Westy, as always, great to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So there you have it, guys. That conversation with Troy and Nette and Westy went exactly where I hoped it would and more. You know, if you are feeling challenged and overwhelmed right now, like so many in our industry are, just a reminder to stop, find some gratitude in your current reality. Know that your identity isn't your income or your bank balance. That's not who you are. And so if you don't get the results that you thought you might, that's no reflection on you as a parent or you as a business person. Through that gratitude, find some calm, take some perspective, and then turn your attention to the things that you can control. Your numbers, your budgeting, your forecasting, proactive conversations with your suppliers and your banks and your creditors, fast decisions, better questions, better planning. To Nette's point right at the start, get the right people around you so that you've got the support you need to make better and faster decisions. And then within your family and team, be kind to each other, be supportive of each other, be respectful, so that you can get through this. I hope that in this conversation, and while you're in the thick of battle, that you get a sense of what Troy and Nette have achieved 7 years on from their adversity. That's true for everyone here as well, you know. So keep that perspective and know that there is silver lining. There is brightness in your future on the other side of this adversity. So to Westy's point, just do what you need to do to get through. But I hope this podcast offers some hope and some inspiration for you that there is brightness at the end of this tunnel. To Troy and Nette and Ashmore Rams, you now stand as one of the pin-up genetic providers into the sheep industry. And, you know, for those of you looking for better genetics and better solutions, I can't recommend Ashmore Rams highly enough. Some of the best producers in our country call on their genetics. And so that is Ashmore Rams for those of you interested. Troy, Nette, thank you sincerely. Westy, as always, really love having you part of Profitable Farmer. To all of you, all the best for the rest of this challenging season. Take care, be kind, and bye for now. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Profitable Farmer podcast by Farm Owners Academy. If you're new to this show, be sure to follow us. If you've been a long-time listener, let your friends know about us or come continue the conversation in the Profitable Farmer Facebook group. All the best as you grow your business and create your freedom farm. Until next time, keep being incredible.